Greetings viewers, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're back on the Mack Tools truck. If you remember from the last video, I was putting the new brake caliper on, new brake rotor, new pads on the passenger front where we had those wheel bearings lock up, and subsequently put heat in the caliper and messed the caliper up, and just a host of other issues. So at the end of that video, it was getting dark on me. I was hastily trying to get everything wrapped up. I went to bleed the brakes and had issue. I should have known something was up because when I took the brake line loose from the caliper, when I put the new caliper on, I didn't get a lot of brake fluid out. It should have poured out on me as I was switching the line over, but it barely dripped a drop. So right now we have some kind of blockage somewhere in the braking system. I don't know if our hose has collapsed internally or if we have an issue with the ABS module slash pump. I hope that's not the issue because that's gonna be some big money. Hopefully it's just a $20 brake hose. But we're gonna mess with that a little bit later in the video and check that out. But the first thing actually that we're gonna work on today is this little brake bolt. It's the shoulder bolt I showed you that had the hex head in it that bolts that plate in place that locks the caliper onto the caliper bracket. Well, again, trying to beat the darkness, sunset coming, I over tightened it. It is a shoulder bolt. Shoulder bolts, you basically tighten to the shoulder makes contact, and that's about it. But I was in a hurry and getting it tight, and sheared the head off. So now we have a broken bolt to extract from that caliper bracket. Luckily, I have a second extra bolt. One came with the new caliper. So I have that to put back in its place. So today we're gonna start filming the video on extracting that broken bolt. Hopefully it comes out fairly easily due to the fact that it broke off from turning it in. It was not rusted in place, so an extractor should be able to remove it. I'm gonna try my best to show you the process of extracting it, but keep in mind that no two bolts extract the same way. So I might have an easy time, you might have a hard time. I might have a hard time, you might have an easy time. It doesn't, you can't ever tell going into it how difficult or how easy a bolt will be to extract. So we're gonna start with that. And then at the end of the video, we're gonna take that brake hose loose, see if we've got fluid coming from the hard line to the hose. And if not, we're gonna track back up the braking system until we find our blockage, our issue, while we don't have any brake fluid reaching the caliper. So we can fix the brake system and move on to putting the AC compressor delete on there, changing the fluid and filters, and putting new batteries in it and getting this thing back on the road enough to drive safely to go to the tire shop and get the 6 new to me used tires mounted up. And then give her a good pressure washing because this baby really needs a bath. We've got lots of moss and mold and junk growing on here. To see what we got as far as the paint or vinyl wrap, I'm pretty sure this is paint, but not 100% sure. So that said, let's go in here and start looking at getting this broken bolt extracted. All right guys, hopefully you can see this. Here's the bolt in question that snapped off. As you see, it's a shoulder bolt. What that means is it's got this little flat shoulder area where the threads stop. So you normally just tighten these so they get snug. It's kind of like the rocker cover bolts on Subaru engines. They're usually shoulder bolts, so you just tighten them up till they stop. Basically, there's not really, they give you a torque specification, but a lot of times you'll snap them off if you actually torque them to the torque spec. You just tighten them up hand tight till you can't turn the threads anymore. Otherwise, you risk shearing them off because they're, I think, an M6x1. They're a very small bolt. So here's our broken bolt. Hopefully I will be able to show you this. It's gonna be a little precocious trying to get around the camera. Hopefully I don't block the camera. But we're gonna get into it right now. So the first thing you wanna do is take a center punch and try to punch dead center of the broken bolt. That way you can start your drill bit centered. You don't wanna get it offset. You get offset and start drilling, you'll get into the threads and tear the threads up. And then you got a bigger issue than extracting a broken bolt. So sorry for getting in the way of blocking the camera. I foresee this being an issue, but we're just gonna put this dead center and pop it, and 3-4 times, and put us a nice little divot there dead center. We're going to be using the Mac 7-piece advanced R.B.R.T extractor set for this. Try them out. Haven't tried them out on camera. I've tried them on other projects. So let's see what size we need. Probably going to go with a number 1. The number 2 is probably a hair big. I normally try to start with the smallest extractor / drill bit I can and then work my way up. That way I don't run out of room. So the number 1 calls for a 7/64 drill bit. So here's our 7/64. We're going to be using the Matco rebranded Hyperstep bits. These are made by Astro as far as we know, or Worth in Germany actually has a version of them. I'm pretty sure they're made by the same manufacturer. But so far they've worked fairly well for me. I wish I'd waited a little while to buy them for Matco's license agreement to run out on them so I could get them cheaper. But, you know, it is what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and start drilling this joker out through the center, as close to center as we can get. Sorry if I am blocking you. I'm trying to work around the camera. That might be deep enough, not exactly sure. Let's stick our extractor in there and give it some taps with the hammer to set it in there. You heard that tone change, so we're bottomed out. Now we'll go get a socket and a ratchet or a wrench and turn that out. Or try to turn it out. Hopefully it turns right out. All right, so got our 1/4 inch wrench, moment of truth. See if we can turn this broken bolt out of here. She's good and well stuck. Which I was not expecting, being that I didn't cross thread this. I just ran it in a little too tight and sheared the head off. Might need to go ahead and try to pull this extractor back out, which it bit really good, and go ahead and drill up to a 5/32 and try the number 2. I'm kind of afraid I'm gonna snap this extractor off. Let's see if we can work it on back out of here. And these things really bite in there good. So yeah, I don't want to risk breaking off the extractor in there and giving myself even more of a headache. So let's go ahead and bump up to the 5/32 drill bit and use the number 2 extractor. Luckily, it will be a lot easier to drill out now that we've got that pilot hole in there. So let's see, 5/32. Yeah, I did get that a little bit off center to the top, but it's kind of hard to drill with a camera in my line of sight. So let's go ahead and get this knocked in there good and tight. And I believe we're using a 9/32 wrench. No, 5/16. So hopefully we got enough meat in there now. We can get this to start wanting to turn out. Again, don't want to break off the extractor in there, so I think I'm gonna go run and get the torch and put some heat in this to persuade it to come out. All right, guys, took the extractor out, heated it up with the torch, hammered the extractor back in, and great success. We are moving that broken bolt out. As you see from the movement of the extractor, I did not drill that very straight, but you guys, the camera was in the way. Doesn't really matter though. We got her to come right out of there. And there we go. That's a Black Friday miracle right there. Got that broken bolt out. Now I'll go get my thread chaser, chase these threads out, although we got it out whole, so there shouldn't be any damage in there. So we should be good to go. And the cool thing about these R.B.R.T extractors, with most extractors, you have a devil of a time getting the extractor back off of the broken. But the deal is here. Let me focus. You've got this snazzy little screw collar. You screw that down and it pops that fastener right off the end of the extractor. Pretty daggum neat. All right, guys, just to demonstrate real quick what I was talking about, this little booger is so stuck on there. These R.B.R.T extractors are pretty daggum nice. They really do bite into a broken bolt and don't let go. All right, so we're trying to get this off of here. So this collar is 5/16, and need another 5/16. Do I have? I bet this is a metric set, isn't it? It is. Will a 7mm get it? No. Will an 8mm get it? Aha. All right, so now that we're set here. All right, so I've got this locked into place. Now I'll just take the wrench, turn this collar, and the collar will force our broken nub off of the end of the extractor, and boom, it falls right off. Easy peasy. All right, guys, so macro lens is on really quickly. Let's take a look at the end of the R.B.R.T extractor. And as you see, we don't really see any damage whatsoever, no deformation to the tip, no twisting, and good to go for extracting another bolt. That's the really cool thing about these, is they're not tapered. They're solid all the way through, so as far as you drive it in, it's gonna bite. And let's look at the end of our broken bolt. As you can see, we've got nice, prominent markings there inside of that broken bolt where that R.B.R.T extractor bit, and it bit all the way through to the bottom of our drilling. We got nice, prominent marks where it sunk its teeth in to pull this bolt right out of there. Even though I drilled it crooked, as you can see. But again, you know, I was trying to work with the camera between me and the work, which is not always the most ideal situation. So, really cool. Again, we didn't damage our threads. I'm just gonna chase them anyway, just to be sure. And we can go ahead and install a new bolt in there and be hunky-dory okay. All right, guys, now that we got our broken bolt out of the way, let's try to figure out what's going on with our brake fluid, why we don't have any brake fluid getting to our caliper. I'm gonna try to take the brake hose loose for right here at the frame where the hard line meets on the inside to see if we get any brake fluid out there. It should pour out, well, not pour out, but should run out. Like I said, when I took the brake hose loose at the caliper to transfer it from the old caliper to the new caliper, no brake fluid leaked. It should have leaked. So I'm hoping we just have somewhere in this hose it's collapsed internally, or you know, the brake fluid rusted in there and crudded up the hose. Hopefully the blockage is just in the hose and it's not in any of the hard lines. It's not in an issue with the master cylinder, and hopefully it's nothing to do with that ABS pump and module, because that's going to be big money unless I can find a decent used one somewhere. So gonna try to figure out what size flare nut wrench I need for that brake hose, and try to get under there and take it loose. Hopefully I don't get doused in brake fluid. That would not be a good time. All right, guys, so took the line loose here, the brake line where it meets the hose. As you see, we had a good flow of brake fluid when I broke that loose, so tighten it back up. Looks like we have an issue with the brake hose. So gonna go ahead and order a new brake hose. I assume it has collapsed internally or something of that nature. Perhaps the heat that built up in that front wheel got into the caliper and possibly melted the liner in the hose. I'm not exactly sure, but we don't have flow from the hard line here to the end of the hose to the caliper. So gonna replace this hose and hopefully the brakes will be good. Luckily we don't have to deal with that expensive ABS pump right there under the front bumper. All right, guys, so since we don't have any flow for this brake hose, it's gonna have to get replaced. There's 3 different ones for the P30 chassis, so you gotta measure the length. And this one's just shy of 41. 41 was one of the lengths. I think 32 was one. This is obviously not it, so it's got to be the 41. We're right at 40, a little over 40. I don't have it perfectly stretched out, so 41's got to be the ticket. So we'll go ahead and get that ordered, and we're at a stopping point once again for this truck, at least on the brakes. All right, guys, let's try not to get any more stupid points today. I know in the video the other day, a lot of you commented, why didn't you just stick the hub in the wheel? I didn't even think about it, did not cross my mind. So this time that's what we're gonna do. Old rotor off of there. Let's clean up that tone ring really quickly. And try not to get a bunch of shmoo down in the wheel bearing, trying to keep the inner in place. And drop her into place. And run our bolts back in on our low. this time we'll torque them to 140. Instead of a predetermined amount of ugga-duggas. There we go. Give another swipe. Make sure hands and gloves are clean. Before handling this, let's put a little bit of fresh grease on our spindle. Now, clean the glove again, get the grease off. Should have done before we cleaned the first time. All right, now we're ready to put this big heavy sucker back in place. Already got the stuff painted up here with some black Rust-Oleum once again. Make it a little less crusty in there. Get our hardware to the side. Old brake pads, new brake pads. Cover the grease. And get the brake parts, lubricant ready. All right. Now the fun part of lifting this massive hub assembly in here. If I can get it out of the wheel. All right, now throw this all back up there. And we're ready to put our outer wheel bearing in and all that good stuff to go back in place. All right. All righty. For our inner bearing. And our washer. And our gem nut. All right, got that finger tight. Now we'll go through the procedure to set the preload. So torque wrench set to 50 foot-pounds. We will spin this while torquing to 50 foot-pounds. Now we will back it off 360 degrees, loosening. .360 off. And now we'll re-tighten, re-torque while turning to 10 foot-pounds. 10 foot-pounds. Now we will loosen the nut between 1/6 and 1/4 of a turn. So somewhere about there. A little bit too tight still. Try there. You hear that? We got just a hair of play. This is what we want. And now we can install our new cotter pin and the dust cap. And we'll take our pliers and bend our cotter pin up. And check our nut's not gonna come loose. Test spin again. Nice free movement. And just a hair of end play. And now we can put our dust cap back on here. And knock it home. And there we go. Another clean rag and some brake parts cleaner will clean the rotor's outer face. Again, getting all the cosmoline off. Now we'll go ahead and put our new pads on. Inner pad is smaller than the outer pad on this particular application. Go ahead and get some caliper grease and grease the ears of the inner pad up. Be sure to knock all the rust out with a nice steel brush from the caliper bracket so these pads do not jam up. Well, this pad, the inner pad, it actually is the one that goes in this channel back here. Just put it into place and push it up to the rotor. Now we will take the new outer pad, which this big boy is the outer pad and this little one is the inner pad. That's our old ones, which were basically new. Hate to have to replace them, but you always want to do brakes in pairs. So here's our new outer. We'll go ahead and drop that into the caliper. Which we'll go ahead and swing back into place. Oh yeah, there we go. Now for the most infuriating part of the brakes of this truck is trying to get the hardware back in. This wedge with a spring, such a pain. I wish it was just a bolt-on caliper. It'd make it a lot easier to replace. Nothing like trying to hold up a massive caliper and pads against gravity while trying to get this stupid wedge in here. It has to be just perfect. All the stars have to align for it to want to go in. This has got to be the stupidest disc brake setup I've ever had the misfortune to ever have to touch. Piece of junk. Stupidest brakes ever. because bolting a caliper on is too daggum complicated, ain't it? Let's not snap that one off this time. All right, there we go. Only raised my blood pressure like 50 points, I'm sure. All right, so now we can put the brake hose back into this mount, put our clip back in place, clip our brake hose back to our ABS wheel speed sensor wiring. All right, before it gets completely dark, let's go ahead and just throw the wheels back on it. Just because it's been out here for a month on the jack stands and they're starting to sink, so I'd rather fall on the tires than without the tires and wheels on there if the jack stands decide to fall over. We gotta take all this back loose anyway. When that brake hose comes, we're gonna have to bleed all the brakes, and actually off camera just now bled this caliper because it was hanging up. I think it's because of the pressure stuck in the other hose. I hope that's all it is. I hope this caliper's not hanging too. But it's just as black as can be. Really, really bad condition brake fluid. Man, these are not lightweight wheels and tires by any means. Sorry guys if I'm blocking the camera. Trying to work smarter, not harder here. All right, that'll do it for that side. I'm not sure if I'm gonna put the other wheel on, probably will, just because it's probably gonna be a couple days before I get that brake hose in. So with that said, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.